Good evening, good late evening, or good morning. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. At first, I was thinking about I'm not doing this, but I had to do it, and I do apologize for the lateness, ladies and gentlemen. Please do me a favor, everybody. When you come in, please hit the like button. Um, I'm just I'm so sick of Stephen A. Smith, and as you see, the name of this particular live stream is Coonerama. I mean, I don't think anybody should be surprised by old Stephen A. Smith, especially by now. I mean, he is who he is. He is who we've always thought he has been. But the problem that I have, yet again, and we know he will do whatever it takes for a Disney check. I mean, let's face it. And if you didn't know, obviously, ESPN is owned by Disney. ESPN, ABC, um, and other things of that nature. Obviously, the Star Wars is they're all owned by Disney, that conglomerate now. But and if you haven't been underneath a rock, you already know that allegedly Terrell Owens checked Stephen A. Smith because Stephen A. Smith was vehemently against Colin Kaepernick not showing up to the quote unquote NFL workout. That was a farce from the beginning. And I guess in Stephen A. Smith's mind, it was better for Colin Kaepernick to sign away his rights and show up to their so called sideshow practice anyway. Now, what he did obviously was at the last minute, I guess his lawyers talked to him and said, hey, don't sign this, don't even show up. And that's exactly what Colin Kaepernick did. And he did switch lanes and had a workout at another facility. Now, we all know, in fact, let me take that back. In my humble opinion, and I've said this once Colin Kaepernick was not re signed in 2017 by the 49ers. Well, I'll take that back. He opted out of that particular contract. And once he was a free agent, listen, I told you back then that Colin Kaepernick would not play another game in the NFL. That he was going to be the scapegoat. He was going to be football's version of Curt Flood. And for those of you who do not know who Curt Flood is, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Curt Flood was baseball's very first free agent. Now, his case brought upon free agency for all other baseball players to flourish. But unfortunately, Curt Flood was not able to take advantage of the very thing that he fought for. And Curt Flood never played another game in Major League Baseball. Now, this is a little different because Colin Kaepernick basically is fighting. What he's doing is protesting police brutality and injustice. And for that, he has been vilified by the NFL and its owners and some so-called fans. Colin Kaepernick has done absolutely nothing wrong. Colin Kaepernick, throughout this 3-year farce of the NFL, he hasn't beaten up any women. He hasn't had any DWIs. He hasn't tested positive for any PEDs. He has done nothing illegal whatsoever. But because of his stance against police brutality, he is not in the NFL. And as I mentioned before, he will never play another NFL football game. And the funny thing is, look at all the people, the so-called black people who have gone up against Colin Kaepernick because he decided to take this stand. And because he doesn't want to do it the NFL's way, which by all accounts has been devious and underhanded in the way that they've dealt with Colin Kaepernick. But in Stephen A. Smith's mind, that's quite all right. I mean, that's fine and dandy. I'll tell you what, Stephen A. Smith, would you sign away your rights? Oh, you know what? I apologize for that. I know I'm asking the wrong person. Because this is the same Stephen A. Smith who had his manhood taken away by Michelle Beadle once upon a time, way back in 2012 during the Ray Rice incident. And we all know, and if you don't know about that one, please just take the time and look that up. But I will give a brief synopsis of that. Ray Rice, unfortunately, hit his wife in an elevator. I don't know. I believe he was in Atlantic City at the time. And that was a very, very embarrassing time for Ray Rice. But subsequently, Ray Rice got married to the young lady. And as you notice, you haven't heard a peep any other way. Now, of course, Ray Rice had been blackballed from the NFL ever since. And I knew right then and there that Ray Rice would never play another NFL game. And this is one of the few times where Stephen A. Smith was actually right. Because all he said was for women, and black women in particular, to be careful. I don't see where that was such a bad thing. But, of course, Michelle Beadle, who looks like a pit bull with a wig on, she got on her white feminist high horse and just berated Stephen A. Smith. And subsequently, Stephen A. Smith got suspended. But instead of Stephen A. Smith having the testicular fortitude to stand by his words, nah, not him. He kowtowed and apologized. And he was so very, very remorseful in my another coon Steve Harvey voice. Very, very remorseful. And, of course, he's been in the very good graces of ESPN ever since. Now, we know that Stephen A. Smith, to be fair, has carried this ESPN network because, as you know, ESPN has lost a lot of its luster when it comes to sports. I dare say that Fox Sports has overtaken ESPN as the worldwide leader in sports. When you look at the amount of coverage that they have, when you look at the other shows that they have, when you look at their coverage of sports, right now, I have to say that Fox, not ESPN, is the worldwide leader in sports. But that doesn't mean that Fox doesn't have its share of cooning and buffooning. Now, unfortunately, Stephen A. Smith is ahead of the field. If this were golf, I would say that Stephen A. Smith is leading the field, but there's a lot of Chargers on the other side, on the Fox Sports side. And of course, Jason Whitlock is breathing heavy on Stephen A. Smith's heels when it comes to cooning, as we've seen. Shannon Sharpe, oh, he'll skip. I can't take him either. And let me tell you, Shannon Sharpe has been getting way too much of a pass from our people. And he was stopped defending Colin Kaepernick. And he even went against him as far as the way he conducted himself, not going for the NFL's okie doke and conducting his own workout. He even went against him, the so-called staunch supporter of Colin Kaepernick. If you saw how he turned his tail. But again, I told people way back not to be fooled by old Shannon Sharpe, because Shannon Sharpe is just the biggest house Negro as Stephen A. Smith. But I digress. This particular episode will be about Stephen A. Smith, but As again, Terrell Owens allegedly was checking Stephen A. Smith, and of course, he had the phrase where he claims that that Max Kellerman was blacker than Stephen A. Smith. Now, as much as I can't stand Stephen A. Smith, and I can't stand him, I would never ever say that Max Kellerman was blacker. They might be on par as far as lack of blackness, but see, our willingness to include anybody to the cookout, so to speak, has ruined us yet again. Max Kellerman is no better than Stephen A. Smith, and for that matter, nor is Terrell Owens. And if you remember the end of that, Terrell Owens and Stephen A. Smith are actually cool. They're actually buddy-buddy. And if you remember, at the end of that segment, he said that I'm going to hit you up after this, and we're going to hang out. So that lets you know that that was all a dog and pony show for the cameras. That those guys are really in lockstep with each other. And let's look at the people that Stephen A. Smith hangs out with. You know, he considers, obviously, Terrell Owens a friend. He considers Charles Barkley a friend. He's a friend to this other coon that, oh my God, Dr. Eric Dyson, Michael Eric Dyson. Oh, wow, I can say big words, whoop-de-doo. And he was talking out of the side of his neck, too. But, of course, Stephen A. Smith, we already know. See, these are the type of people that Stephen A. hang out with. I don't know if you can see it. This is how Stephen A. Smith gets down. You understand what I'm saying? That's who he feels are his people. People like this. And if you don't know who that is, let me back up. I don't know if you can actually see it very well. But this is who Stephen A. Smith gets down with. God, I can't get this correct. There we go. Now we can see him. And if you don't know who that is, ladies and gentlemen, that is one of the biggest coons in America today. Well, they're the two biggest coons in America. As you can see on the left is one of the head coons, Stephen A. Smith. And the other one is one of my favorites, Sheriff Lobo, that sorry bastard, the ex-sheriff, David Clark. And if you don't know how much of a coon he is, well, you need to Google him up. And if, in fact, you even need to go to one of my uploads that I did on my other channel, which is Extreme Sports and Worldviews, and look up my upload of him, that sorry bastard David Clark. He's no longer Sheriff Clark. In fact, he was removed from that post about 3 years ago, and not a moment too soon, and several years too late for our people. But those are the people that Stephen A. Smith considered friends. You know, I'm so sick of this guy. I mean, his cooning, it just, there's no end to it. In fact, after this particular upload, I'm not even going to talk about this sorry bastard Stephen A. Smith anymore. I'm sick of him. I'm sick of T.O. I'm sick of all these cooning bastards. They're getting too much shine. And I've watched other people's take on this and how they're all championing T.O. Oh, well, he really put him in his place. Man, T.O. is right alongside with him, cooning and buffooning. All they did was put on a WWE type show to ring in the masses so they could each get a piece of that Disney check. And believe me, it's a very small piece of that Disney puzzle. But they'll be happy with it because we already know that those guys will sell you out for a quick buck and a Popeye's chicken sandwich. Please like, share, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Claude White. Take care, and God bless.